Shalom, salam, and welcome to our panel discussion about the Israeli-Palestinian relations post-October 7th. My name is Neta Achituv. I'm a writer and an editor at Haaretz. Whenever an Israeli or a Palestinian is asked about the conflict, the immediate answer would be, it's complicated. Well, you can imagine how much more complicated it became on that horrible Saturday and the terrible war in Gaza that followed. But complex as it is, we have to talk about it, yet alone try and solve it. After all, we do want to live here in peace. We will try to do so in this panel discussion with our intelligent and knowledgeable panelists, whom I will now introduce. We have Rula Hardal, the Palestinian co-director of the organization A Land for All, Two States, One Homeland, a research fellow at the Kogod Center for the Study of Jewish and Contemporary Thought at the Shalom Hartman Institute, and a lecturer of political science. Next to her is Professor Chuck Freilich, a former Deputy National Security Advisor in Israel and today a senior fellow at INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies. He also teaches at Columbia University and published a number of books, including Israeli National Security, a New Strategy for an Era of Change. Next to him is Anat Saragusti, a colleague, an Israeli journalist and a commentator who covered Gaza and the Palestinian territories for many years. And joining us via video, Hussein Ibish, a senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington and a weekly columnist at The National and The Atlantic. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Hussein, for joining us from DC. Let's begin.
Pleasure.
Since everything is personal and our subject is so delicate, I would like to start with a personal question to each of you. How do you personally feel about the situation? How have you been doing since October 7th? Bring your whole identity to this question, to this answer. You can tell us a story, an anecdote. Just share your thoughts on a personal level, please. Rula, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. I feel, if I try to think about the main feelings that I have since October 7th and the beginning of the war, I feel sad, angry, and I'm afraid. Afraid because of the threatening situation that we are all live in, and I live in, especially being a Palestinian, because I don't feel that I can really distinguish between Palestinians in the West Bank or inside Israel or as citizens of the state of Israel and Gaza. We can differentiate between the intensity of the violence experienced upon them from the state of Israel and the Israeli army. But I do feel that the state of Israel and even the majority of the Jewish Israeli citizens in Israel, they treat all of us as enemy. So that's why I do have my fears. I do have my fears also because I live between the northern part of Israel and Ramallah and Jerusalem. So I'm not sure how things are going to develop and if we are going to witness any further escalation. Not saying
just
that
maybe
we
say
don't,
that you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel, and this is the population that is the most, I think, sensitive or in the most complex situation now.
Yeah, and we have witnessed since immediately after October 7th, even though we are citizens of the state of Israel, we witnessed from the state policy, state institutions, the mainstream Israeli media, as well as the majority of the Israeli public, a severe crackdown of the freedom of speech and expression, of political activism, when it came to say anything, any simple thing opposing opposing the Israeli war and the Israeli actions toward Gaza and toward the Palestinians in the West Bank, or saying anything about
even
stopping the war.
Pain.
Exactly. So I didn't feel ever that I am safe as a Palestinian citizen in the state of Israel, or I didn't even felt equal. And as a political scientist, I used to teach about all of these issues. So I'm very aware about the whole evolution and the whole development of not only the conflict, but also I can speak maybe another 2 hours about the relationship between the Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel with the state institutions and governments, as well as with the majority of the Israeli Jewish citizens. But it's not our point today. But this is something different this time.
Is it hard to go to work, for example, and work alongside Israeli Jews?
It's hard because not only because of our different political opinions and how we politically see things, but it's hard for me because I could express my empathy and fears and compassion when October 7th happened, but the majority of the Israeli Jews that I know, they are not able to do it morally, ethically, politically, with what's happening on Gaza. And it's something shocking and give me a lot of thoughts about what became from us, from all of us, and what we will see later on among the Palestinians and as well as among the Israeli Jews. What kind of human beings are we going to be after this war and after this bloody violence?
We will talk about it later.
And this is actually one part of my fear. And I feel angry because the whole world, including you in Israel, you are watching the people, the killing of the people in Gaza, innocent people, children. You are witnessing the people that don't have water to drink, and people are starving in Gaza, and we continue our life somehow. And some of us continue their life as everything is usual, as well as the whole world. And even speaking about ceasefire and about the need to stop this war, it became for me as a Palestinian citizen in Israel a kind of crime.
Yeah, it's been hard to speak, also for us.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Chuck, how do you feel?
Well, I think like everyone in Israel, I was devastated by what happened, horrified. And I spent much of my childhood weekends at Kisufim, one of the kibbutzim in the Gaza area. So it was an area that I always particularly loved. And the kibbutzim, to me, always embodied the best of Zionism, the pioneering egalitarian spirit of rebuilding the Jewish homeland. I went to visit, of course, to see what happened, and the sense of horror was pronounced. It was one of the worst days in our history. Some people believe that it was the worst. I spent over 20 years of my life in the defense establishment, and since then have written a number of books about Israeli national security. So even though I left the government 18 years ago, I must say I felt a sense of personal responsibility for this. How could we get it so wrong? How could we blow it? This was our national nightmare. We always said throughout all of the wars that if the Arab side had ever been able to occupy, to overrun 1 square inch of Israeli territory, the people in that area would be annihilated. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, all of this came on top of the events of the last year, the judicial wrecking ball. I wrote in Haaretz on more than one occasion that what the government was doing was tearing the defense establishment apart, and there would be severe consequences. I never thought it was going to be this bad. I also wrote literally on the first day when the war started, that this time, unfortunately, unlike our usual practice, we have to define clear objectives, a clear end game, and see if somehow out of this horror something positive could happen.
Which is absent.
Which is, of course, exactly what the government did not do.
And still insisting not to do.
5 months after. And we'll get into the ramifications afterwards, but that's a serious problem. How have we gone in the space of 5 months from being the focus of enormous international sympathy to a nation which is becoming a pariah, which is a strong word, but that's what's happening. One of the strategic outcomes of this war, incredibly, could be a rift with the United States. I'm not sure that there is any hope left for the peace process. Again, we'll talk about that. I think Rula may have overstated the case a little bit. Some of us managed to feel a little bit of sympathy for people on the other side as well. That doesn't mean, or even considerable sympathy, that doesn't mean we don't believe that the war should continue to be prosecuted. But the human element, of course, is there. And I think that people who intentionally conducted a genocide or a genocidal attack, which was designed to cause Israel to respond in the massive way that it did, should be cautious in what they say. So how do I feel? Could be better.
Yeah, could be better. Thank you. Anat.
So, on a personal basis, like Rula was saying, I'm still very sad and frustrated and devastated. And I think that on October 7th, if I'm reflecting back, I was worried for my dear friend Vivian Silver.
Oh, you knew her.
A well-known peace activist, really dear friend of mine, who lived in Kibbutz Be'eri, and we didn't know whether she was abducted or murdered. And it took over a month to understand that she was murdered on October 7th and, to go and bury her. And shortly after, since I was a correspondent in Gaza for many years, so I still have contacts in Gaza, so I was worried for 3 families in Gaza whom I'm still in contact with, and they were displaced. And it took me some time to understand that they don't have internet there, and so I have to contact them via SMS and not, text message and not WhatsApp. And to see that they're still alive, and they moved from Jabalia to Dir el-Balach, and from there to Khan Yunis, and to see how they are. And then I was worried for a very dear friend of mine, el-Fahim. So I had like 3 focal points of worries, because you asked about identity, because I feel this is my identity. I mean, this region is a composition of all of this, because I cannot, stand aside and say, well, I'm a privileged a Jewish Israeli woman, and I'm safe, and not see what's happening to friends of mine, colleagues, friends, people who we were going on a shared journey together to build something new here. And then I felt very frustrated, because I said, for so many years we've been demonstrating and writing articles and making stories and bringing the voices of the people from the other side of the border, to try to humanize them. And we failed. We failed in such a, the failure is echoing very strongly. And it really is such a frustration to feel that. So it took a while to process this frustration, and and I still follow up on these people, in Al-Fahim and Nazareth within Israel, and in Gaza, and then Vivian is gone, so you don't have to worry about her anymore. But she's an icon. She's a symbol to all of this. So it was really, really very, very a deep sadness to process and to contain after October 7th, and tells the story of the region in many, many ways, and of peace activism, and for the belief in the ability to build something on an agreement between us and the Palestinians, which completely collapsed on October 7th. And I don't know if we can, rebuild the spirit, and let alone, spread it among our peoples again. I don't know. I'm really worried about it.
I identify with what you say. No, I'm also a peace-seeking person for so many years, and the feeling was that they took our best people that Saturday, which is a very hard feeling. And now we'll move to Hussein, as an American Muslim, and
I'm an agnostic.
Okay.
I'm from the Muslim community. I participate in the Muslim everything, but I'm not actually a religious person. I'm very much of an agnostic.
And also, as an American citizen, I would like to ask you, because the United States, as everybody knows, is very much, here. Present in so many ways. So what do you feel about it? How did you feel on October 7th? And what do you feel about the war raging now with the help of your country?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly an Arab American. And I'm actually from Beirut. I'm Lebanese. And I relocated after I couldn't take the civil war that had raged from 75 to 1980. I relocated permanently to the United States in the fall of 1980. And in the summer of 1982, I thought it was a good time to go back for the first time. And so I was there for a couple of days, and I was there to, greet the Israeli army as it came in 1982, and I experienced all of that. This war, the attack of October 7th, and then the Israeli response in Gaza, had reminded me from the beginning of 1982, at least for me. And I've spoken to other Lebanese, Kim Ghattas, the great journalist, others said the same thing. And I think what we meant by that is that those of us in our age category, especially who were Lebanese or lived in Lebanon, et cetera, who went through all of that, we felt very decentered in 1982. We felt the ground shifting under us. Like, we didn't know anymore exactly where we stood. The landscape was moving quickly. And I personally felt discombobulated by this situation in a way that I haven't been since 1982, frightened for the consequences and unable to fully comprehend exactly what's going on. It's not that any of the motivations of the different actors are particularly mysterious to me. They're not. But I felt discombobulated and deeply disturbed in a way that I hadn't been since then. So that's the first reaction that I have. The second thing was, I identify so strongly with both sides, because when I read early on about the experiences of your Haaretz colleague, Amir Tibon, who's a guy I know very well. I mean, he used to be in Washington, and I dined with him many times, and I know him. And he had family, in one of the kibbutzim that were attacked, and I felt very strongly for him and his family, because I know what it feels like to feel hunted by armed men. You don't know exactly who they are. You know that if they catch you, they're probably going to kill you. I know what that feels like. Maybe not in the same way, but I know that emotion. And it's terrifying. And so I felt very, very much an empathy with the victims of October 7 in that regard. And then, of course, once the carnage in Gaza began, I felt very strongly for the people of Gaza, because I'm an Arab, and I've been surrounded by Palestinians my whole life, in Lebanon and in the United States. I've worked on this issue for a long time, and I feel very strongly about that as well. So I've felt very strongly with the victims on both sides, and I've been angered by both sides. I mean, one of my reactions on October 7, 8, and 9 was rage, pure, burning, visceral, molten rage at Hamas, because I knew what they were doing. I knew they were engineering a massive human sacrifice of just of Israelis, but also of Palestinians, because we know what the Israeli response is going to be. The doctrine of disproportionality of the Israeli military predates the state. It goes back to the Jewish militias, certainly into the 40s, and in a way even into the 30s, the mid-30s. This disproportionality is part of a survival strategy, and it's consistent. So we knew the response was going to be horrendous. And everyone who says that the Hamas leaders didn't know is lying to themselves, is entering a neurotic defensive crouch, right? But at the same time, Israel is responsible for attacking the entire society in Gaza. And there's no political purpose. I mean, Chuck was talking about the failure to have a political goal. There is one goal here, and it's not to destroy Hamas. One out of the main Hamas leaders is dead. Sinwar is fine, Daif is fine. They're doing okay. And even if they die, Hamas is going to be okay. That can't be done. The purpose of this war clearly from the outset has been what Netanyahu and others said from day one: we will avenge October 7th. This is a war of vengeance. And it's been meted out as much at the whole society in Gaza as against Hamas, and that was to be expected. And that's why you have the death toll that you have, and the amount of children killed, etc. And I think really, in a way, honestly, this is so primal, right? People are behaving on both sides in the most primal manner possible, right? Hamas and the other people who came across from Gaza wanted to kill or capture everyone they could find. And Israeli forces in Gaza have been so ready to shoot anything that moves that they shot hostages who escaped without shirts, waving white flags and shouting help in Hebrew, but they got shot. So there is this sense in which people are just motivated by a bloodlust, and it is, after 100 years of conflict, the lowest point in the conflict. Palestinians delivered the worst blows to Israelis they've ever done. Israel is doing the worst to Palestinians they've ever done. And I just want to point to what May Golan, the Minister for the Advancement of Women, said. She said, I rejoice over the ruins of Gaza. I want them to tell their grandchildren what we did to them when they killed the Jews. And this is the same attitude that motivated the Palestinians on October 7th. I want the Jews to tell their grandchildren what we did to them when they drove us out of southern Israel into Gaza. It's this primal, visceral hatred that is so unsettling to me.
I agree. How is the atmosphere in the States regarding the war? The States is very much involved.
It's very split. I mean, right now, thankfully, the Republicans are marginal because they would add a very unpleasant third element, because the Republican Party on the Middle East is driven by evangelical, apocalyptic fanatics who are both pro-Israel and actually pro-Greater Israel, and also anti-Semitic at the same time. But it's the Democrats who are in power, very much. And they are split. The mainstream Democratic Party is still very pro-Israel, but it's very unsettled by the war because the war has been bad for American policy, bad for America in the world, bad for the Arab world. It's unsettled the opening with Saudi Arabia, and they want the war to end as soon as possible, but they're not willing to cut Israel off. It's what Biden is saying now. Israel cannot kill another 30,000 people. It has to be very careful in Rafah. We need to get aid in. This war has got to wind down. We need it politically. We need it diplomatically. We need it strategically. But then there's also a progressive left, which is younger, more left-wing, angry about the war, skeptical about Israel, in a way in which the two older generations, the Biden generation of old liberals who are really pro-Israel, in a very deep way. They have this liberal attachment to Israel. And then the middle-aged people like Blinken and Sullivan and Brett McGurk, who are, they're not absolutely attached to Israel, but they believe in the special relationship as a strategic benefit to the United States. But then there are the younger people, the under 35s or under 40s, especially under 35s, who are skeptical about Israel and really skeptical about the occupation and have been against the degree of American support for this war from the outset, and they are mad at Biden. In the end,
Yes.
I think they'll come back to Biden. If I have anything to do with it, they will, and so will the Arabs and the Muslims in the United States, because American fascism is not the answer to any of this.
I think he's building on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hussein.
But it's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. Thank you. So you started our second round in a way because I would like for the second round to use your expertise and knowledge and what all those years that you have studied and everything that you have in your brain. Hussein just started with it, so thank you for that. Let's go with you, Rula. You know, the two-state solution seems old-fashioned or maybe even hyper-modern. I don't know which way to look at it, as like something of the past or maybe a certain future. What do you think could be a solution for the region? Do we need to renew our discourse in a way and talk about new solutions, new visions, or can we rely on whatever has been achieved, which maybe is not a lot, but it's something until today?
Do you want my diplomatic or less diplomatic answer?
Less diplomatic, of course.
Okay. I will do it less diplomatic, but a little bit not too much academic and starting using theories, etc. But before that, I would like to say something about one component of what Ibish Hussein said. I am afraid that I misunderstand you, but you raised the point about the violence from both sides, and I don't agree with the symmetric way of comparing the violence of Hamas to the violence of the State of Israel. We forgot a very important point here, that we are speaking about a state, very strong state in terms of its military and high-tech and technology and economy, with another, you know, a kind of, not even an army, a militant group in Gaza. And we forget the much more important point that we are speaking about occupier force and occupied people. Even though Israel went away in before 16 years from Gaza Strip, but the Gazan people live since then under siege. And Israel actually controls everything in regards to Gaza Strip, not only in the West Bank. So I cannot forget this point, that we are speaking about occupied and occupier. So regarding the solution, I don't like speaking about solutions, but I do advocate one solution, because I represent also a political organization and movement that has a political vision for the Palestinians and the Israelis from the Jordan to the sea. And we speak about an advanced form of the two-state solution, where our solution is based not on segregation and separation between the two people, but integration and sharing the homeland. And here we come to with a kind of superstructure, political, legal, economic, human rights, superstructure of a union between the two states or a confederation. But we do believe that we still believe on the two-state solution, not because we like the two-state solution. I think the classic two-state solution has a lot of problem. First of all, it was based on racist attitude of separation between the two people. But in reality, we cannot separate the people. We live in the same geopolitical unit, and we live under the same actually regime in different legal statuses as Palestinians and Israelis. And without expanding now my analysis about the deadlocks of the two-state solution, the classic one and the Oslo Accords, which try to implement the two-state solution, we deal in our political vision with all of these deadlocks, like Jerusalem, and the settlements and the right of return of the Palestinian people, the status of the Palestinian citizens in the state of Israel, and so on. But before speaking about solutions, okay, and I think solutions are something to leave for both people, but mainly for the politicians to decide about. We need to speak about the principles and the values that we need to agree about before speaking about any kind of solution. And these values and principles, first of all, we need to acknowledge that we have two national groups here living in the same space between the Jordan and the sea. And these two groups claim their belonging to this place as a homeland. And we need to acknowledge the same equal individual and collective rights. In other words, for both people, in other words, the self-determination for both people. The only one group that has implemented and enjoy since more than 7 decades its right of self-determination in a sovereign independent state is the Jewish group. While the Palestinians, they live under continuous negation of their right of self-determination in the form of a sovereign state.
You know, but if you talk about symmetry, in 1947, the UN gave both people, you know, the right for a country. They said, let's do a two-state solution, and one people, you know, chose to declare and found a country, and the other did not. So we have to be honest about that as well.
To be honest, if you would like, we can refer to the history, but I do have my different analysis to the history, and I will start from the Zionist project establishing the homeland for the Jewish people in the land of Palestine and in this region. And later on came the partition plan in 1947. And even though that the partition plan was actually not only not fair and not equal, I do believe that both sides, if we refer to the history of both sides, we can see that both sides actually didn't accept this this plan to separate the land. But leave it. We have later on, during the 75 years and until now, we have a fact on the ground that we have the State of Israel established in 1948, and the State of Israel is continuing with its policies and governments and legal actions on the ground toward the Palestinians, the same pattern of negating the right of the Palestinian people, the equal right of having their own state. And this should be solved. The other point is that we cannot continue live in this situation. You see also that the Palestinian people are not giving up.
Yes.
They continue struggle for their right.
We cannot, this is true, but what is the practical way that we can get out of this situation?
I have a practical way.
Okay, please be short, because we have
first of all,
3 other people.
Israel has no right to continue controlling another group of people.
I agree, but this is a declarative statement.
So, to end the occupation, the military occupation of the Palestinian people, of the Palestinian land, of the Palestinian territories, and I'm speaking only about the territories that were spoken in the latest peace agreements during the 90s and later on also, during the Olmert administration. To end the occupation, to have a decision that both people are going to negotiate a solution. And we have a political vision with detailed solution which gives both people the same rights and acknowledge also, I mean our solution in Land for All, and acknowledge also the very the very important basic needs of both people to be attached to this place and to recognize also the suffering and the collective memory and collective history of both Palestinians and Israelis. Nobody is going to leave this place.
Yeah.
Not the Palestinians and not the Israeli Jews. Otherwise, the other scenario is the escalation of this situation.
Which we are already in it.
Exactly, and a bloody future for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Chuck.
Well, one of my lifelong ambitions, which I think I am going to be disappointed in, is to conduct one of these discussions without hearing just endless rhetoric and hearing some practical solutions on the Palestinian side. And so I'm going to be very practical. First of all, let me say that I am a lifelong supporter of the two-state solution. I think it is critical for both people, but my primary concern is for the Israeli side. I think it is critical to our future as a predominantly Jewish and democratic state. It is critical to our international standing. It's critical in the end, in the long term, to our security as a state. I have been increasingly concerned in recent years that we passed the point of return and that it was no longer practical for two primary reasons. One is because we may have outsettled ourselves out of the ability to divide the land, and because the Palestinians have outrejected themselves of every possible proposal. And it's not just the 47 partition plan. It starts with the Peel proposal in 1936-37, and 2000 Camp David, and 2000 the Clinton proposals, and 2008 and more. So there's a question whether this is still a viable option or whether we're beating a dead horse. I hope it's not a dead horse. I have been, I must say, quite wondrous since the war broke out how the Biden administration keeps speaking almost from day one about how we almost immediately have to go towards a two-state solution. If the conditions weren't propitious beforehand, they certainly are now. I asked myself, what are they smoking? It must be some pretty good stuff.
They have a vision for the whole region, which is amazing.
Well, the whole thing seems to enjoy a lot of smoke, but all power to them. I'm for it.
Whatever they are having, we want us to.
I want a lot of it. So what can we do? Well, first of all, I think we need a leadership change on both sides, because the current leaderships are not capable of doing it. I am hopeful that this will happen in the near future on the Israeli side. The Palestinian side will have to go through a period of the battle for succession after Abbas and the PA, and we don't know what's going to happen in Gaza with Hamas, and is the unfortunate but possible outcome of this whole battle for succession that Hamas takes over the entire PA. Let me put that aside for the moment, because that totally complicates things. What can we do now that is realistic? I think the most that we can do, and I think the most that the Palestinians can respond to today, and even this is very hard for both sides, is what's called the idea of civil disengagement from the West Bank. In other words, we announce what percentage, it's over 90%, it's depending who you talk to, 94 to, we keep 4 to 10% of the land of the West Bank. The rest, we say this is not going to be part of Israel. The IDF remains deployed for military purposes as it deems necessary, but we begin the process of bringing the settlers back home, and we try to reach what the Palestinians should have had under Oslo, which is real autonomy. That, I think, is the most we can do for the foreseeable future. In the longer term, I would love to get to the two-state solution. I don't know that it can be done. I think that a more realistic thing is actually probably to go back to some old ideas that we cast aside, and that's linking that 90+% of the West Bank that we would withdraw from to Jordan. Jordan, as it is well over 70% Palestinian. Together, it would be high 90%.
Sharon's plan.
Actually, it used to be the Labour Party's plan back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then you have Jordan, which is an established state, an established economy, established military, together with the Palestinian entity, and it can become a confederation, a state. It's up to them to decide what their relationship is. That's probably the long-term solution if many years down the line, because what happened on October 7th pushed the two-state solution off for a very long time, if it didn't kill it completely. Maybe in the long term we can go back to the traditional idea of a two-state solution. But I think this idea of the Palestinian-Jordanian Confederation is far more realistic. And by the way, why does everyone expect of Israel, why is the entire onus for solving the Palestinian problem on Israel? The Arab side helped create it. Why shouldn't Jordan and Egypt help solve it? I'm not saying solve it completely, but help.
No, but I think the
and Jerusalem, we haven't mentioned Jerusalem.
From my perspective, Jerusalem has to be divided.
The whole equation of the Palestinian question is the transformation of the Jewish question from Europe into the Middle East. So I don't blame only the Arab countries.
Yeah. Hussein, you want to say something about Chuck's things before I go to Anat?
Look, I mean, Jordan has done more than anyone else by hosting the largest number by far of Palestinian refugees outside of the greater Israeli state as it's existed since 1967, Israeli occupied territories, and granting almost all of them citizenship. So I think it's very hard to look at Jordan and say they haven't been helpful. I mean, that is a huge hit, and that's probably as far as they're going to go. But anyway, let's go on with the conversation.
Okay. Anat, please.
So I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is religion.
Oh.
And I think that both societies need to address this, because what happened on October 7th was religion. And I hope I will not forget, I will not regret what I'm going to say now. Looking at Hamas, okay, and I've been in Gaza and covering Gaza as a journalist for many years since Hamas, was established back in '87. The time unit that Hamas refers to is eternity. They say that everything that happens now, at the end, we will prevail. The same concept, the same idea, and the same notion we found. And this is what I'm going to regret, and I'm not comparing in any way, in our Messianic ideological groups, okay? Same thing. The time frame is eternity. You know all these slogans of Am Yisrael lo mefached miderech aruka, Jewish people is not afraid of a long way, etc., etc. At the end, we will prevail. And that means that both sides that have this faith are willing to live on their swords forever. And they understand very, very basic understanding and deep understanding. And this is part of the ideology that this is our faith, to live on our swords. This is the faith. We can do nothing about it. And everything that is put on the table for them as a solution, a temporary solution, long-term, short-term, whatever solution is temporary, because at the end we will prevail. At the end, Islam will prevail. At the end, the Jewish Messianic ideas will prevail. And this is something that me, as you talked about identity, as a secular woman who believe in democratic values and equality and secularism and liberalism, I cannot correspond to that. So we have to address this. And I think we have now a window of opportunity, at least inside the Israeli society, because everything has been exposed now, due to October 7th atrocities, because we are now facing, all the clashes with the ultra-Orthodox communities, and whether they should be drafted to the army or not, join the army or not, and the budget that is allocated for them to sit in yeshivas and study endlessly on our taxpayers' money, etc., etc. So we have to, I think, reopen what we call the status quo between the state and religion and the religious institutions, not the religious community, the religious institutions and leaders.
Yeah.
Because this is, as I see it, this is our problem. This is our main obstacle towards any kind of solution, 2-state, 3-state, one homeland, two people, three people, whatever. And the same thing, I don't want to tell the Palestinians what to do. I'm not that, patronizing them. But I think the same process has to go, the Palestinian society has to go through the same way. What is the set you talked about, the set of values that we want to establish our lives here in this region? Is it based on equality, liberalism, freedom of speech, freedom of faith, etc., or is it based on religion with all the package that is affiliated with it?
I will add another term, which is sacrifice.
Exactly.
It's also
same thing. You see that the soldiers who were killed in battle, the way they are described as heroes, and they grow from the grave as heroes because they're holding the God's torch towards this prevail in eternity. Okay. So I think this is something very, very deep in both societies. And the fact that Israel is the only democracy in the world that has not separated the state from religion, this is very, it's embedded into our, the notion of the state. And it makes it very difficult for us to overcome it. And we see in this extreme right-wing government that was elected a year ago, that they gain more and more power. And the whole thing of the settlements is based on that, on these Messianic ideas, that God promised the land to the Jewish people, 5,000 years ago. So this is something that I cannot relate to. Yeah. In no way. And I prefer to work together with Palestinians who think like me and raise the flag of equality and liberalism and democracy, etc., and secularism, than to be affiliated with these, Messianic ideas. And this is something that I may regret, or people will attack me. But this is how I feel, and I think this is something that is not spoken about when we speak about 2-state or 3-state or whatever solution we can have. Now, speaking about solution, what I see is like the model of Europe after World War II. It's a kind of a Marshall Plan to rebuild Gaza, to rebuild the whole, to restart the whole region, to rebuild this institution of the Palestinian people, to rebuild the Palestinian society, which has been fragmented intentionally by Israel over the years, and to rebuild the society. And then, when the society is rebuilt, and of course all the houses that were destroyed, etc., then we can speak about a solution. But this is not the time to speak about the solution because we're devastated. Let alone the fact that the Israeli society doesn't see at all what's going on in Gaza. At all, except for Haaretz, that speak about and report about, the atrocities and the devastation and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. No other media outlet is showing us, and so the Israelis don't understand why the world is so criticizing us and calling for ceasefire, because they don't see the hunger, and they don't see the lack of water and medicine, and the poor children that are walking around the whatever rubbles in Gaza looking for a piece of bread. It's heartbreaking. Yeah. It's heartbreaking, and the Israeli society, not only that they don't see it, they don't care, and some of them think that the Gazan people deserve it because of Hamas. They cannot defer, the innocent and the not involved, what they call not involved people from the Hamas militants, and they don't understand why the world is suddenly against us, and we're becoming, I don't know, the state in the world nobody wants to relate to, and it's
getting closer to Russia.
Exactly.
Thank you. Hussein, you probably identify with the religious part, as you are agnostic, as you said at the beginning.
Do. But I have some good news, which is that the mainstream of the Palestinian movement is not Hamas. The Palestinian movement is led by the PLO, which is actually a secular organization. If you read the PLO charter, you will not find any mention of Islam or Christianity. It is an entirely nationalistic document. And the claims that the PLO has been pursuing at the negotiating table, and before that, in armed struggle, are not religious claims. Now, it's true that Hamas is motivated by a religious sort of millennialist vision, but the core support of Hamas among Palestinians rarely goes above 23-24% in any opinion poll. Where they get more support is when they yoke their religious ideology to outbidding everyone on armed struggle with Israel, claiming to be the national movement because they are fighting the occupiers for control of Palestinian land. And that's what Hamas wanted. That's why they launched October 7th. Israel, believe it or not, is a secondary issue in the logic of October 7th. The prime directive of Hamas, since it was founded in 1987, has been to take over the Palestinian national movement from secular nationalists led by Fatah and turn Palestinian cause into an Islamist cause, preferably under their leadership, and they have not succeeded in doing that. Anyone who controls the PLO and the non-state observer member mission in non-member observer state mission at the UN and the 130 Palestinian embassies and missions around the world speaks for the Palestinians on the diplomatic stage, at the Arab League, at the UN, everything else. And Hamas does not control that. And until they do, they are a side player. This is all a bid to get control of the national movement and then control over the diplomatic power of the Palestinians, which is the one thing Palestinians have assembled that Israel can't take away from them. Yeah. Now, I do want to say to Rolla, hold on a second. I want to say to Rolla, don't misunderstand me. I'm not comparing Hamas with the state of Israel. I understand you switched to a political register, and you're right. There's no comparison, occupier, occupied state, non-state, etc. That's all true. I'm talking about the psychology of killing, the psychology of rage. So I just want to be clear on that. So you had a secondary question for me.
Yeah, we are out of time as always in those panel discussions. I do want to end with something nice, something optimistic, to leave our audience with like a gift that we want to give them. So one sentence, Hussein, one sentence.
Yes. If Israel were to announce that it accepts the goal of Palestinian statehood and create under the auspices of all the friends of Israel, America, the European countries, and the Arab countries with relations with Israel, a set of benchmarks that the PA must meet, and a timetable for them to meet them, after which they become a state, then we have a clear pathway from hell to coexistence. There's no problem doing it. It really is not that hard.
This is optimistic. I love that sentence.
Yes,
thank you for that. Rula, one optimistic sentence. Dream, vision, something good.
I think at the end of the day, and as we all maybe agree, nobody is going to go out and to disappear, and we have to find a way to live together here in this place, in an equal matter of life, collective as well as individual, and that this situation of suffering and of repressing the other is not viable. That's what I believe in, and even though we cannot see it now, it will come one day.
So nature will...
Not only nature, because of our history and because learning from other conflicts in the world, conflicts usually end.
Yeah.
And the way how we end and when we end the conflict is in our hands. Both people, but as you said before, I agree with you that we don't have the political leadership, especially in Israel, and I will continue blaming at the first stage Israel, at the political leadership in Israel. And
hey, we said something good, and you said that before, so let's stop with the optimistic notion. Yes, Chuck.
Well, first of all, I've always thought that optimism is borderline anti-Semitic, but I will try to be optimistic nonetheless. Look, I just have to say one sentence. We've tried roadmaps or a set of benchmarks.
Never.
That was what
Never.
the Oslo Accord was all about, and that's what the Bush roadmap was all about. It's failed. So I don't think that's the way to go forward now. The way to go forward is that I think we will have political change in Israel soon. I think, as Anat was saying, there is real soul searching in the country, and we will be open to looking at all sorts of new avenues of going forward that we weren't in the past.
Yes.
I hope that we reach the bottom and we can only grow from that. And I think we have a window of opportunity here. And I think this is maybe the last chance for us as, democratic and liberal people or community to make the change and regain these values.
Thank you.
Thank
you for our panelists. Thank you, Hussein. Maybe I'll contribute my optimistic sentence, and which I always tell my kids, it's always seek and search, actively search for the good people, for the good deeds, for the beautiful little things that are hidden in between the darkness, because this is the only way to live, especially in such a crazy region. So I thank you, the audience. I thank you, Rula, Chuck, Anat, and Hussein. Thank you so much. And for optimistic news. Thank you.